Good day to one and all. Today we are going to see about inflation. Yes, inflation arises when price level of a economy goes on rising continuously. In Tamil, it is called panavikam. When people hold large amount of money in their hand, it is known as inflation. An economy may suffer from inflation without any rise in prices. According to classical writer, inflation is a situation when too much money chases too few goods. It's an imbalance between money supply and gross domestic product. As per Keynes, inflation is an imbalance between aggregate demand and aggregate supply. In aggregate demand and aggregate supply are not imbalancing, means it is called inflation. In an economy, if the aggregate demand for goods and services exceeds aggregate supply, then price will go on rising. What are the causes of inflation? The primary causes: demand for a commodity in a market exceeds its supply. So demand is high when compared to supply, means it is known as push up the price. It is demand pull inflation. Demand is high, so it is called demand pull inflation. And when factor prices rise, cost of production rise, that is cost to push inflation. Increase in public spending. Government spending is an important part of total spending. So this has created inflationary pressure on the economy. Deficit financing of government spending. Government spending increases beyond what can be financed by taxation. For instance, it prints money and spends it. This adds to the pressure of inflation. Next one is increased velocity of circulation. Its formula is money supplied by the government into velocity of circulation of money. In boom pace, people spend at a faster rate. Population growth. When population is growing, means expenditure is also growing. Hoarding. Excess demand is sometimes artificially created by hoarders. They underhide their stock level and sell the stock when the prices are high. It leads to hoarding. And genuine shortage. Supply will be less than demand, price will rise. It's a genuine shortage. Exports. If the total output of a country is not sufficient to meet both domestic and foreign demand, then exports will create inflation. Trade unions. By demanding an increase in the wage rate, they increase the cost of production. Tax reduction. Sometimes government reduce the taxes to gain popularity. It leads to inflation. Imposition of indirect taxes. Government may impose indirect taxes such as excise duty, value added tax, etc. Price rise in international market. The imported price of some commodities or factors of production may rise in the world market. Non-economic reasons. Price of these commodities tend to increase. For example, at time of natural calamities, crops are destroyed, reducing the supply of agricultural products. Forms of inflation. There are too many forms of inflation. First one is demand pull inflation. When an economy aggregate demand exceeds aggregate supply, we already know that demand is high, means it leads to demand pull inflation. So the demand inflation is associated with full employment when supply cannot be altered. And see the graph. In this graph, SS and DD are aggregate supply and demand curves. SS means aggregate supply curve, DD means aggregate demand curves. OP and OQ are the equilibrium price and equilibrium output. OP means equilibrium price, OQ means equilibrium output. Due to exogenous causes, demand curves shift rightwards from D1. See the picture. The demand curves shift rightwards to D1. At the current price OP, demand increases by Q1 level to Q2 level, but supply is always OQ only. Excess demand Q2 put pressure on price. So this is achieved by demand is equal to supply. The excess demand is eliminated by fall in demand and rise in supply. Next one is cost to push inflation. Yes, its inflation originates from supply side also. Aggregate demand remains unchanged, but there is a fall in the aggregate supply due to some exogenous causes. It may lead to increase in price level. The starting price is the equilibrium price OP and the equilibrium output is OQ. If the aggregate supply has fallen, the SS curve shift leftwards to S1, S1. At price OP, now supply will be OQ2 but demand OQ. This will push prices high till the new equilibrium is raised at OP1. So OP1 is a new equilibrium level. At the new price, there will be no excess demand. So inflation is a self-limiting phenomenon. From the figure, it is known as inflation is a self-limiting phenomenon. Open inflation. Next one is open inflation. It denotes continuous rise in price level. Repressed inflation means excess demand. Excess demand is prevented by increasing price level. This measure is taken by government like price control, rationing, etc. Hyperinflation means it is going on a faster rate. That is often that happens hourly increase in price level. Nowadays also petrol and diesel prices are increasing every day. But in hyperinflation every 1 hour the rate may be increased. It leads to demonetization. Creeping inflation means it increases very slowly over a period of time. Moderate inflation means it is neither too fast nor too slow. True inflation, it takes place after full employment. It's a situation of full employment. National output becomes perfectly inelastic. Semi-inflation means a country may experience inflation arising from bottlenecks even before full employment. Impact of inflation. Impact of inflation. Inflationary pressures in economy may generate good effects on the economy, particularly in case of creeping or walking inflation. Favorable impacts. Higher profits. Profit of the producer are generally favorably affected by inflation. Higher investment. The entrepreneurs and investors get added incentives to invest in production activities. Higher production is productive investment grows during inflation means it leads to higher production of various goods and services. Higher employment and income. Possibility of higher income for the shareholders. Gain for the borrowers. That is, the borrowers have excess money. They can repay the money. They develop their business. And unfavorable impact. There is a fall in the real income of fixed income group. There is salaried people are very much affected. They have only fixed income. Inequality in the distribution of income. Yes, one sector of people are earning too much money and one sector of people are earning the same level of money. Upsets in the planning process. So the planning process cannot be done effectively. Speculative investment is increasing. So price level is increasing at a faster rate. Speculators start selling goods at high prices. Harmful impact on capital accumulation. Yes, some people, there is some group of people accumulate the capital and it's a harmful impact on capital accumulation. Lenders will lose. We have already indicated that borrowers will gain during inflation. For the same reason, lenders will lose during inflation. Harmful impact on export income. If the prices of export item also increase during inflation, their demand in the foreign market may fall. Control of inflation. How to control the inflation? By applying monetary measures, fiscal measures, direct control, we can control the inflation. If the supply of money can be decreased, price will fall automatically. If the government withdraws paper notes and coins from circulation, the money supply will decrease. The lion's share of the total money supply is bank deposits and bank credit. So if we can reduce the rate of lending by banks, we can reduce the total supply of money significantly. And fiscal measure means government expenditure. An inflationary gap arises when aggregate demand exceeds the maximum potential supply in an economy. So inflationary gap arises when aggregate demand exceeds maximum potential supply. To overcome this, the fiscal measures may be undertaken. A decrease in the government expenditure, decrease in government transfer of payments, increase in taxes imposed by government. Otherwise, a combination of all these measures control the inflation. Direct control. Such measures such as wage freeze, putting upper limits on the prices of certain goods, direct control is applied. Other measures, increasing domestic production, otherwise augmenting the supply of commodities, we can control the inflation. Thank you.